welcome. Greetings, salutations, one and all. Welcome to the Ultimate Hockey Show. Um, Here on this Friday, Michael Dale alongside with Petty. No, you do not need to adjust your calendars. You do not need to adjust your plots. I know it is not Monday, but it is Friday, and on the occasion of the 2025 Stanley Cup playoffs, we are here to wrap up the season, talk about the postseason, made some predictions, and whatever we have time for, don't have time for today, we will get to Monday's show, just given the schedule. Surprisingly, how laid out it is. But we'll get to that in just a minute. My co-host is with me as always, Red Petty. Good evening, Rick. How are you?
Michael, I'm doing really well. And not the least of which is I am totally fired up about playoff hockey.
Oh yeah, my conversation with you this morning was any indication. I might have to pass myself to my chair, but we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah,
Um, what?
this could be one of the best. Whether or not the Jets win, I'm not talking about that because we're going to talk about that
Yep,
later. Actually, your camera you need to reset a little bit because
yep.
half your head is chopped off there.
There it
Oh,
is.
that's good. Um, I just think in general, maybe I'll just start off with this. I think we hit on it earlier this week on Monday. I think this could be the most wide open that the playoffs have ever been. Yes, there are teams like St. Louis who got in near the end. Montreal snuck in. Montreal got into the playoffs the last game of the season. Whatever. Same as same as Minnesota and St. Louis, I guess, too, in there. However, that was there were a few teams that kind of got in on the last game of the season that they had, or whatever, the last day of the season.
And there was
But it
one team. There was one team that had the same amount of points as the St. Louis Blues, but didn't get in either.
Who's that?
Calgary Flames.
Right, right. But because because of the regulation wins or whatever that factor is that
Yep.
got them in. But what I'm saying is but there's no, like, in the past there was like Vasilevsky was playing out of his mind and the Lightning looked so good, or when the Penguins in 2019, whatever that was, they just looked so dominant. They didn't win the President's Trophy that year, but they were so good. Everyone said, they look like the team to beat down the stretch. They just look like they have all the pieces in place. Well, you could say that about a lot of teams this year. Toronto has come on the second half of the season. A lot of things are going good, but there's still question marks there. The Jets have had a fantastic year, President's Trophy, but their playoff history the last 2 years hasn't been great. So they're not a lock. Then you look at Vegas. Well, they've had injuries all year. Are they the same Vegas they were when they won a couple of years ago? I don't know about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Florida, they won last year. They've had a ton of injuries. They've been not too good down the stretch. So I'm just saying there is no, same thing with Washington, was fighting for the President's Trophy up until the last few weeks of the season, and then they kind of fell off a little bit after the whole let's get Ovi to the record for goals scored. Then their kind of excitement faded off and their level of play faded off. So all that to say, I can't think, when I look at these 16 teams, I don't look at any one team and say they're a lock or they're going to make it to the conference finals. I don't think there is any one team that has this great path going in. And that's what makes it so exciting, because I could see out of these teams, I'm just going to rattle through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I count 11 out of 16 teams that, just off the top of my head, that if they won the Stanley Cup, I would say that is not a surprise to me because they're a good team. But there's no superstar like they're here and all the other playoff teams are here. There's no like that. There's just a bunch of teams kind of right in that pod of they could win it. And it's going to depend on health and on getting lucky, having a hot goalie, getting your power play going, being a good on the penalty kill, staying healthy, all those things. So any of that's, so I see it's wide open. I hope that's a wide open door for the Jets, but just like we know, because you win the President's Trophy, that doesn't mean you go all your way to the Stanley Cup. There's no guarantee for that. So, but anyway, I don't know. How do you?
It's interesting, right? I was looking at like I don't know about you, but like I was looking at the bracket and I'm going, yeah, okay, this is my pick. They're
Yeah,
playing so and so, but I could easily be convinced that so and so could win the series. Most notably those 2-3 series in each division. I think those are coin flips. Um, I think the wild cards are pose a different kind of trouble. In particular, Minnesota. They were right up
yeah,
there until all their injuries, and now they got them back and they got in the playoffs. Um, Championship pedigree in St. Louis, and of course the
yeah,
President's Trophy with the Big Jets. Montreal surprising people to get in. Ottawa surprising people to get in. Something that also jumps out at me is like rivalries in the first round. Like, yes, LA and Edmonton is not a rivalry, but I think when you played in the playoffs enough times in a row, such as they're going to, you'd want to build up a natural sort of rivalry with them.
yeah,
Um, Toronto Ottawa's bad for the first time since I was yesterday years old as a little kid. Um, Eddie Belfour, Patrick Aleem, Game 7. Agonizing heartbreak in the second round with Jeremy Roenick in Game 6, giving the Flyers a second round win. Um, Battle of Florida's on again, and I think that's where there's really an intriguing sort of argument. It's a tough bracket, but getting out of the first round probably will jumpstart somebody on the route to the Stanley Cup. And who that is, we're not sure yet. And I'll just wrap up the regular season with this thought. What was your thoughts on the game on Wednesday, and who won the races to get into the playoffs?
Well, I was at the game on Wednesday night, and I was actually, I was wondering. I don't know if you thought the same thing. Probably a lot of people in town thought, "What are the Jets going to do?" They arrested a bunch of guys on Sunday night, and they lost to Edmonton. What are they going to do on Wednesday? Like, are they going to rest guys? That's a long stretch between Sunday and then starting up again on Saturday and Sunday. It's a week off. And then I heard on Tuesday night, I was so shocked. No, we're going with our regular lineup. We want our guys to stay sharp. You could say, well, we got to protect our guys for the playoffs. You know what? You could have the first shift on Saturday night, somebody could get hurt. And it's, you know what I mean? It's just, it is what it is. So you can't play to avoid getting hurt or not play guys because you have to save them for the playoffs. So we were at the game, my dad and we really enjoyed the game. It was very good defensively. The Jets, they got a ton of shots on that Husso. He played lights out. I mean, it was unbelievable. There's some of the saves he made. I think the Jets outshot him in the game 43-28 or something. It was ridiculous. I think they had 22 shots in the first period. It was just, it was just crazy. But anyway, the Jets played well, and they played well defensively. They should have probably scored more goals and won a little bit more easily than having to go into overtime. But Hellenbuck played well. I thought the defense played well. They played well as a unit together. The power play still, I don't know how many chances, one or two chances to score, or they had a two-man advantage. I don't even think they got a shot on net, maybe one.
No, there was
But
a lot of
you could just
passion
see on
on
the
the
power
outside.
play, they really miss Velarde and Ehlers. It's just a completely different animal having Perfetti and Iafallo out there. And that's nothing against Perfetti and Iafallo. I like them both as players, but they're not Velarde and Ehlers, right? So otherwise they wouldn't be on the first unit normally. And so that's the kind of the shame that I just read on the weekend. Sorry, no, or during the week, that the Jets power play is number one in the league, but in the last 40 chances, they've only scored 7 goals. I don't know what 7 for 40 is. That's as math, that's not good. I don't know what that percentage is. I should do it on my computer here. Probably somebody listening can say, "Oh, Rick, why don't you just use your calculator?" Okay, I'll use my calculator.
Yeah, it's not great,
7
but
divided by 40. 17.5%. So not 30% like they've been rocking all year. So is their power play going to be the win, the make or break during the playoffs? It could be.
Uh,
You don't know. It's
absolutely.
better
I
than
think I think, and I say this in a general sense, Rhett.
yeah,
Um, when power plays are at such a premium, because it seems like the rule book kind of goes out the window to a point.
yeah,
Um, you get one or two power plays a game, and if you score on them, you get a benefit. By the same token, I didn't think the Oilers were a great team last year, but because they killed off 40 something straight power plays in a row to start the playoffs and into the Stanley Cup final, look at where they ended up. That being said, I also feel like having a good penalty kill is better than a good power play, just from a defensive aspect.
yeah,
But again, that's neither here nor there. You will need a power play goal at a time or two. But Rich, I also think that Jets' power play statistically was not sustainable. I didn't you expect the power play to click at 30% all year long. That's asking a lot. Like, that's statistically a lot for a Winnipeg Jets power play that hasn't really had a lot of success. And when you look at the elements that they're missing in Gabriel Velarde and Nick Wailer's two T quads on that number
yeah,
one unit, maybe a little bit of regression is due. But where I think the Jets are going to excel in these playoffs is 5-on-5. Their 5-on-5 game is rock solid, especially defensively, and I think they have a lot more depth than a lot of people are willing, outside of this market, to give them credit for. Um, if you've watched the TSN preview show yet for the playoffs, I saw a little bit of a screener last night. Jets fans might want to look away, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. And I think it's just a matter of, like we've always said, there's been, for me, it's never been about these 82 games. For me, it's been game 83 starting tomorrow, making amends for what has been literally two wins in their last eight playoff games, and by further extension, if you want to go further back. So the reality is that this team has not won a playoff series in a long time, and for lack of a better term, it's put up or shut up time. There's no ands or buts about it, and we'll see
you're
what
freezing
happens.
up.
Yeah, I know you're freezing up too. Your picture hasn't moved in a while. Um,
Well, it's because I'm looking down. Sorry.
oh,
I'm
okay,
just
yes,
reading stuff.
yeah,
I just
yeah. Sorry.
reading up on stuff.
But yeah, I think it's put up or shut up time for this Jets team, much like a couple other teams in these playoffs. And
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
yeah, no, I think it's put up or shut up time for
You're
this
freezing
hockey
up.
team. Still, okay, hold on. I'm gonna go out and come back in. Rich, you want to talk about the first round series? Just about the schedule, and then we'll talk about the series when I come back in.
Sounds good.
Is that any better?
So far, so good.
Okay, yeah, no, we have internet issues here. There's no doubt about it. Cause I just got a slew of Rob's comments as well.
Okay.
Something with our internet here. Um,
Okay.
my apologies. Um, let's talk about this. Let's start with the Jets in St. Louis. What are your actually no, let's back up. Let's talk about the regular season to an end. And that is quite simply, we made preseason predictions on who would make the playoffs. Well, it's time to grade the test. How did we do?
Okay. Um, okay. Well, you want me to go through? Okay. So why don't we look at the West first? Okay.
Okay.
So, um, you and I both picked Dallas to get first place, Colorado second place. I had Winnipeg third, you had Nashville third, and then I had Nashville as a wild card 1, and you had Utah and Winnipeg as wild cards 1 and 2. So you had Utah Hockey Club ahead of Winnipeg. I had them in third place. So we were both wrong, but at least we got right Winnipeg, Colorado, and Dallas all making the playoffs out of the Central. We were not right on Minnesota or St. Louis. Neither of us saw Minnesota or St. Louis making the playoffs. So, but we got Colorado, Dallas, and Winnipeg right in varying order, if that's any consolation. And then in the Pacific, you and I had Vegas in first place, which is in fact what happened. Oh, and I had LA in second, Edmonton in third, which is bang on. That's exactly what happened. You had Vancouver and Edmonton. Vancouver did not make the playoffs. And I had Vancouver as a wild card too, and they didn't make it. So I got first, second, and third right in the Pacific. Woo, 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 woo. Vegas, LA, Edmonton. So any comments on that?
Yeah, I don't know with my internet. It's just I missed all of what you said because of my internet. I just spent like 2 seconds resetting to get back in here. No, I mean it's just
you or is
as
it
much
me?
of a crapshoot as the playoffs are. I think the right. Sorry. No, I think it's me. Pretty sure it's me because mine is spinning too. Hang on, I'm just gonna go check something and be right back. Uh, hold on. All right, I think we are back. Red, can you hear me? I'm gonna bring you in.
I
Um,
can.
can, can you hear me better now?
I can. We'll see how it
Okay, the
goes.
whole so just as a quick aside, we are a new internet provider, and when I prompt the system to do a reset, it takes 10 to 15 minutes.
But I thought you
So
said Valley Fiber was like the cat's meow.
it is, but the odd time it needs a reset, and this just
A
happens to be
reset.
one of those moments. I don't know
A
why.
reset is that what they tell you when they set it up? They say once a week you're gonna have to do a reset.
Apparently so.
Okay.
Anyway, we're good now. You can hear me?
Very well. Actually, it's much better now. Very clear and no hesitating. So,
Okay, perfect. No, that's better.
and we have to
I
say
just
sorry to the listeners.
yeah, sorry for everybody. What we're going to do is we got a half an hour left. We'll see what we can do here.
Okay,
But let's talk about it. I saw you read the regular season.
right.
Um,
Did you hear me? Because I can
I
go
heard
through it really
I
quick.
heard I heard a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go through really quick. You and
Okay, yeah.
I
Go
both
through
picked.
go through
Okay,
the gen.
okay. We selected in the Central that the Dallas and Colorado would finish 1 and 2. Winnipeg, I picked 3. You picked Nashville 3. I picked Nashville to be wild card 1, and then you picked the wild cards as Utah and Winnipeg. So in the Central, you and I got Colorado with Dallas and Winnipeg correct, just not in the right order. It was Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado. We both had Winnipeg in either a wild card or third place, and but otherwise we got 3 out of the 4 teams potentially out of the Central we got right. In the Pacific, very interesting. I picked Vegas, LA, and Edmonton, 1, 2, 3. And I knocked that one out of the park because that's exactly how it ended. You picked Las Vegas, Vancouver, Edmonton. You had Vancouver in second and LA not even in it. And I had Vancouver as a wild card. So we both got Vancouver wrong that we thought they'd be in and they weren't. But so not bad for me. I got 3 out of 3 in the Central, or 3 out of 4 in the Central, 3 out of 4 in the Pacific. You did a little bit less, but that's okay. That's not a scoring. It's just letting people know we were close. We you know what we're talking about to some degree. In the East, this is where it was a little bit interesting. You and I both picked the Bruins to make the playoffs in wild card 2. That did not happen. I picked Ottawa to be wild card number 1, and look at that. It finally happened. Ottawa finally made the playoffs. And I picked in this order: Toronto, Florida, Tampa Bay, Ottawa. I only got Florida and the Tampa Bay mixed up, but I got it right. Toronto, Florida, Tampa, Ottawa. You got Toronto, Tampa Bay, Florida, and then Detroit, Boston. So you got 1, 2, 3 right in the Atlantic. Well done, Michael. Well done.
Jiffy, I did
And
something right
then
for
in the
once.
Metropolitan, well, the New York Rangers and the Washington Capitals threw everybody monkey wrench because the Rangers fell out of from being the President's Trophy winner last year to not making the playoffs. That's just unbelievable. But I picked the Rangers, the Devils, Carolina, and you picked the Devils, the Rangers, and the Islanders. Islanders did not make the playoffs. Rangers did not make the playoffs. New Jersey's in there, but they're in there as a wild card. And I got Carolina and New Jersey right, but New Jersey's the wild card. I picked them in second place. So in the Metro, we weren't as good. We were probably better than the others. So we're still not bad. We're probably batting about 75, 80%. So not bad. So now we are where we are. And
Big, biggest disappointments, Vancouver and Nashville to you?
and New York Rangers. Yes, without a doubt.
And Boston, maybe.
And Bruins, although I picked them as a wild card too, which was a real drop off from last year where they were in second place, I think, or first or second place in the Atlantic. So it tells us that you and I both thought the Bruins were going to fall off. I guess we just didn't realize they would fall off that much. But
It's interesting. Let's quickly talk about this because I want to get through at least the 5 series that start
yep,
tomorrow and Sunday. Do the rest on Monday and evenly pitch to that if we
yep,
have to.
yep. And I got
Um,
some other things at the end after we go through the playoff rounds. Those 5 series, then we should chat about some other stuff going on, or maybe I'll sprinkle it in while we're talking. But yes,
Okay. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, sounds good. So let's start with the Jets in St. Louis. How do you see this series at
Uh,
first blush? It is the St. Louis Blues, the hottest team in hockey, going to play the President's Trophy Winnipeg
yeah,
Jets. Series starts tomorrow afternoon,
sure.
late afternoon, early evening in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Um, how do you see this?
Well, can I remind you? Remember how excited we were? Who was the hottest team last year going into the playoffs, winning 8 straight?
Jets.
That's right. And who won their season series against Colorado going away, including, I think it was a 7-0 shutout or 7-1 blitz of Colorado in the last 3 weeks of the season.
Jets.
That was the Jets. So, you know what? St. Louis is a good hockey team, and you can never count out uh, Binnington. I mean, he is now like he's the Canada's #1 goalie. He played pretty good in the Four Nations Cup. He's won a Stanley Cup before. He's got a ton of experience playing in big games. It's going to be an interesting matchup, him against Hellebuck. Hellebuck, who hasn't won anything in games, but has won a lot of the hardware. So it's sort of an interesting dynamic. I still think I can throw out last year Colorado series and even the year before with the Jets going out. I think this is a completely different Jets team. I think being coached by Scott Arniel is not the same as being coached by Rick Bonus. I think the players have learned a lot of things. I don't think they're the same team. They're mature players like Cole Perfetti, who was a non-factor last year, wasn't even in the playoffs playing games, is now a huge part of their team. Samberg has elevated his game. They've got Tanev and Shen, which they didn't have before. Another year with Velarde, another year with Iafallo. So I just think some things I don't think they're the same team as they were last year. But St. Louis, they're a good hockey team. The only thing with St. Louis is, and this is where the Jets, if they play their defensive style first and they don't get into run and gun with St. Louis, they don't get into cheap stuff and pushing and scrapping and fighting and all this nonsense, and they just concentrate on playing really good defense, they could win a lot of games 2-1, 3-1 in the series, 3-2. I just think they have more offense. They're better. St. Louis, their struggle is going to be outside of Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, and Braden Shen, those three guys, where are they going to get offense from? There's no more. David Perron is not there anymore. They lost some guys in free agency. They lost some guys. They traded. Like, I'm just saying they're not the team that they were when they won the Stanley Cup. They had a little bit more scoring, more balanced over more lines. And so I think the St. Louis Blues can be beaten by the Jets. The other thing that's interesting, I don't know if you saw the schedule. The Jets play Saturday, Monday at home. Then they have a
Thursday, Sunday. Yeah.
2-day gap to game 3, and then another 2-day gap to game 4, and then another 2-day gap to game 5 back in Winnipeg. It's crazy. They play 3 games in like 9 days or something. It's
Yeah. Who does that benefit?
good question. Good question. Yeah, it's. I think it benefits. You know who it benefits? I'm going to say this because I complained all year about the schedule maker and how there were too many back-to-backs and how it impacted the level of play. It benefits the fans. That's what benefits the most, because this is going to be a really good series. You're going to see talented players who are rested and healthy and ready to go. Who does it help? It probably helps. I don't know. Maybe the Jets. See, I think the Jets, they're a faster team. They're a better skating team. If they have more rest, they skate better. When they skate better, they check better. When they check better, they play better. So I see the Jets winning this series. I know some people might think I'm crazy after the last few years and what's happened, but there's something to have your goalie is the #1 player in the league. I don't know if you saw this, just on another note, and we're chatting on this for a while. I just read, I was on TSN before we came on the show. They did a poll, a year-end poll of the top or of the 12 hockey experts at TSN, and they said rank the top 25 players in the NHL. Do you know who's #1 for 8 of the 12 guys? Connor Hellebuck.
Hmm.
And the Jets are one of only two teams that has four guys in the top 25. It's the Jets and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has Vasilevsky, Point, um, Kucherov, and who's the other four? And Hagel or
Halo, yeah.
Kucherov. And the Jets have Haley at 1, Kyle Connors at 9, Shifley's at 18, and Josh Morrissey's at 24. They're the only team other than Tampa Bay that has four guys in the top 25. St. Louis has none in the top 25. So there's a lot of factors. The Jets have the best defensive team in the league, the best power play, the number one goalie. They're not healthy. Two of their top 6 players are not in the lineup right now.
Hmm.
And they're still, I think the Jets are favored. I think they're going to win this series. How about you?
Yeah. Um, your argument has not done enough to sway me as far as changing my result. Now, my result was not different than yours. Um, but you might have swayed me in the fact of to shorten the series. I think it's abundantly clear that Robert Thomas is not 100% healthy.
Mm-hmm.
He missed their last game and two of the practices leading up to the
Mm-hmm.
series. Um, I think down the middle, Shifley versus Thomas, or even the Mesnikov versus Thomas, and then if I go further down the roster, um, I like the Jets third and fourth lines a lot better.
Yeah.
Um,
And remember, at home, they're going to be able to match up Lowry's
right,
line with
right, and then
Tanev and Appleton up against Robert Thomas or against Braden Shen. So either or.
right, and I think we're gonna see a mismatch. I don't believe that there's gonna be a set matchup. I think it's gonna start a certain way,
Yeah.
but it will be a mismatch. I think the Jets, all told, you just play your lines the way you play them. I don't think there's any matchup concerns. Where I think is if you're at a Lowry line for St. Louis, I think you want to try to avoid the Lowry line because if the Lowry line and the Barron line can do their job on the Robert Thomas line, it comes down to me of the question of whose third and fourth lines are going to score more goals, and I think the answer to that is Winnipeg.
I agree.
Now, St. Louis's defense, led by Bertuzzo, by Falk, and those guys, a
Is
lot of games. Pardon?
Parayko in or is he out?
No, he's in. But I'm
Okay.
saying the bottom part of their defense course played a lot of games, a lot of tread on those tires. And I think if the Jets can play physical with them, they can kind of push this to an area where the Blues are not comfortable. Also, Rich, it's quite simple. Recency bias. Less than 2 weeks ago, the Jets dominated St. Louis. The score didn't tell the entire tale of how dominant that team was.
Was that the 3-1 win?
That was the 3-1 win on the
Okay.
Amazon Monday night.
Yeah.
In fairness, they could have played that game till 2 in the morning and the result wouldn't have changed. Or would have been very hard pressed to change. Connor Hellebuck versus Jordan Binnington. I think this is a saw off as far as the goaltenders go. Yes, people want to say, oh, yeah, let's find a way to drag the Four Nations tournament into this situation. To me, the Four Nations thing is irrelevant. We're having this discussion because Connor Hellebuck gave up a goal to Connor McDavid to win the Four Nations. I think that is irrelevant. I think to say yes, Connor Hellebuck got the Americans to the big game. He got beaten on a world class shot because the defenseman left Connor McDavid wide open in the slot, which is a big no, even in today's NHL.
Mm-hmm.
All told, over the course of a series, Binnington will steal one or two games. The bottom line is the Jets' depth, regardless of who they're missing, will overwhelm the St. Louis Blues. You've gotten me to shorten the series by a game. I'm saying the Winnipeg Jets are winning this series. They're going to do it on the road in Game 6 at the Enterprise Center in St. Louis. Jets in 6.
Okay, I have exactly the same. I said Jets in 6. It could even be 5, could be 7. Um, but I agree. And there's a good point here. One of the listeners indicating it's true. See, I didn't realize this. Holloway is out for St.
Yep,
Louis. Eh?
yeah, it's a huge loss. Thanks,
Yeah.
Rob.
Holloway is out, and you say Robert Thomas is fighting some type of significant injury. Obviously, they're not going to talk
Or
about it.
a injury.
Yeah. Something that's really bothering him and his level of play. I know because when the Jets played St. Louis in that game, when they won
Yep.
3-1, yeah, they only allowed 15 shots on net. St. Louis did not get a lot of offense. They just did not. Like, I didn't see
Yep.
Braden Shen. I didn't see Robert Thomas. Like, normally Robert Thomas is like, he controls it. He's a big kid, big centerman, first line, plays with Jordan Kyrou. Like, those guys are they're like Scheifele and Connor for the Jets, and they were almost invisible. And now that I heard like this, he's been fighting this thing for a while. It makes sense. And now you're in the playoffs where it's a little bit more intense. There's more physicality. There's more. It's harder to find space on the ice. It's harder to get away from guys. You got to go in the corners and get banged around and find. Oh, and Torrey Krug, I didn't realize that he's out as well. So
Yeah.
the St. Louis is ripe for the picking. I think the Jets can win this series. I'm saying 6 games, the same as you. So
And let's be clear, I'm saying 6 games because Bennington can steal a game or two.
yeah, so it could be even less depending. Yeah,
Right.
and I just think in general, I'd be shocked if what happens to Winnipeg this year, or what happens to Winnipeg is like what happened last year with Colorado. I'd be stunned that the St. Louis just completely runs Winnipeg off the ice, scores 6-7 goals a game. Hellebuck has an 800 save percentage, and they lose in 5 games. I just don't see that happening this year. I just don't. I could be wrong, but I just don't. So,
I
okay.
think the Jets are a deeper team to avoid that.
Yep.
To me, Rich, I think when it went sideways, no disrespect intended to Rich Bonus, he failed to make adjustments. I don't think Stoddard Neal didn't let the lineup go status quo if things go wrong in games 1 and 2. I think we're gonna see a tweak or two.
Yep.
I think those guys that can come in. Jared Anderson Dolan and then Morgan Barron. Big parts. Jared Anderson Dolan had something like 27 hits or something in the 5 games that he's played or 4 games that he's played. The other X factor for me, Rich, is Morgan Barron in the middle. Just did
Yep.
not have him as the fourth liner last year.
Nope.
He's in this year. Big part of your success is the bottom part of your
Big part of your
lineup.
success. Yep.
If Barron's gonna score a big goal or two in this series.
I agree, but I don't get too crazy about Anderson Dolan. Listen, as soon as Velarde and Ehlers are healthy,
Well,
Anderson Dolan
fair
and
enough.
Gustafson are out. So what's the status?
Absolutely fair enough. But I'm saying the depth where it is this year compared to last year is in a better place. That's all I'm saying.
Everybody's just gotten a little bit more mature, and that's also with Perfetti being a little bit better. He's much
Yep.
better now than he was a year ago. So let me ask you this: what's the status on Velarde? Do we know? Is he
middle
like
of the series would be
middle of the series?
my
And the
guess.
fact that games 3, 4, and 5 are all 3 days apart, that just adds an extra day for recovery there. Yeah, which is great.
Yep.
Which is
No,
great.
I agree.
Okay. So Velarde is not even a game time decision tomorrow. Like
Nope.
he's still away.
No, I think he's out. Unless they're really, really misleading people, I don't expect to see him till game 4 or 5.
Yeah. And I heard with Ehlers, they're saying week to week, which means unless he's in the hyperbaric chamber,
It would be game 6 or 7 more likely to second round.
That's what I heard too. Is more likely if when the Jets make it to the second round that Ehlers, because it's not just being healthy. It's now you've got to practice with the team and now practice really intensely because it's playoffs, and that's you got to get your conditioning and everything up to.
And that's also the issue with Velarde. Is the Jets haven't really practiced. Velarde just started with the strength and conditioning coach, and that tells me usually you're a week to 10 days away.
Yeah. Yeah.
From when that starts.
And Ehlers, I don't think is on the ice yet. What I heard.
No, and the other one is Rasmus Kapari hasn't skated the last 2 days, so there's the assumption out there that he had yet another setback in his attempted return for a concussion. So,
Michael, I agree with you 100%. That could be if the Jets get healthy, that could be one of the most, like, besides Cole Perfetti being that special
right?
cog there on the second line, and then um, Scott Arniel deciding if he wants to move, let's say, Niederreiter up and bring Ehlers down to play with Lowry because they have a connection, and to put more size on that second line,
Right,
Niederreiter.
and then you can get a better matchup on the road because now you got Ehlers, and it's almost like a chess match of where do you want to put your basket, right?
Right, and the size, just having that
Yeah,
line, Ehlers, Nemestikov, and Perfetti's smaller, but they're quick, so they're shifty. But if you wanted to add some weight in front of the net in the corners, you can move. And they've experimented. That's part of this year with the injuries. They experiment and they tried things out, moving Ehlers down to play with Lowry and Appleton, moving Niederreiter up to play with Nemestikov and Perfetti. And then you've got now, if everybody's healthy, Velarde's in the top line. You've got on that fourth line, I mean, Barron centering Tanev and who am I forgetting? Iafallo. I
yep.
mean, that is some kind of fourth line. And I agree with you. Finding Morgan Barron as that big cat that he is, 6'3", 230, and having him in the center, you think about that center, that's a centerman's row there. Scheifele, Nemestikov, Lowry, and Barron. Three of those four guys are 6'3", 220 pounds plus. I
Yeah.
love it. That's what you need. And,
And
yes, Nemestikov is smaller, but that's fine. Every team's got one small center on their line. So that
and the other thing is too, in a game like this, when you're really, really short or you're defending the lead,
yeah,
that second line can then become your fourth line, and then you don't have much of a problem.
you can mix it up, and that's the nice thing. I agree with you because of the how they've got that all spread out and they trust all those lines. They've got that depth. I agree with you. They could put out in the last minute of a game, the other team, St. Louis, could put out all their superstars to try and score a goal, and they could have out there Barron with Iafallo and Tanev, and I would
Then you
have no problem with that.
then you could put Shen out there with Sandberg as an example.
Yeah,
You know,
but
it,
I'm just
it
saying you
doesn't
can put the
necessarily
fourth.
have to be Morrissey DeMello either.
Correct. I'm just saying you don't have to have Scheifele. You don't have to have Larry. You could put the fourth line out there at the end of the game with a minute left, and the other team has pulled their goalie and they're playing 6-on-5, and I would have no problem having those four guys. Whereas in the past 5 years ago, the Jets' fourth line, I don't want those guys out there, not in the last minute when they're defending a lead. So
Yeah.
anyway, we should move
And
on. We both like
yeah,
Jets
let's
in 6 games.
quickly talk about it. We got 10, 15 minutes here yet.
Yeah,
Just talked about the other series, which starts tomorrow, Dallas, Colorado. Um, this
I
to
love this
me,
series.
this to me has not been a very. To me, I thought this series would be good. The more I read and the more I find out about this series, this might be one of the quicker series in the first round. I'm sorry to say.
You think because the Dallas Stars are so vulnerable with
Yep.
injuries and with Ottinger not playing well down the
Like
stretch?
there's a lot of uncertainty. Like I
Yeah,
was out with friends watching the Dallas Winnipeg game,
yeah,
and for the sake of argument, after the game, about half an hour after the game, we went on Facebook and we looked at the Dallas Stars Facebook page and some of their commentary after that Winnipeg game.
yeah.
Oh man, it's like Cowboy desk was like some of the comments. This team's not good. They're folding. The other thing is they've had not one of the better defensemen hasn't played in Merrill Hastings, and then now Pete DeBoer announcing today that Jason Robertson is week to week with a lower body injury after leaving the game in Nashville in a knee brace.
Yeah, he was in a huge leg brace after the game, walking out of the rink to the bus. Yep.
I mean, and then you also look at the trajectory of both of these teams, like Colorado. Okay, like, but this to me will be an interesting case study about how you can change a team in season to have the success of the Colorado Avalanche that they've had. Think about it. They've swapped out their goaltending tandem. They've added Marty Natchez. They've removed Mikko Rantanen. Yes, we haven't even talked about Mikko Rantanen, being in this series and kind of being like a lost duck on the Dallas Stars to try to find his way. Marty Natchez has settled in nicely. Brock Nelson has settled in nicely. Like to me, if past performance is any indicator, there's two teams going in polar opposite directions. But as I've said multiple times on this show, past performance is not an indicator of future success and vice versa.
Mhm.
So I don't know if we're disrespecting Dallas, but based on them being 5-0-5-2 in their last 7 games and not really being able to generate with the ferocity of what we've seen. And, yes, they had that 7 or 8 game winning streak, but it was buoyed by some great goaltending by Jake Ottinger and Scott Wedgwood. Like that, the analytical numbers for Dallas have not been great. Um, in recent weeks, whereas Colorado, I think, is going in the other direction. That being said, I have some concerns about the Avalanche. Um, but if you can neutralize McKinnon and Makar, which is easier said than done, I don't think they're as deep as they were even last year or the year before. But
Or when they won the cup. Yeah, they haven't been the same team since they let Nazem Kadri go and now Rantanen, right? So,
so, like, do you agree? Do you disagree? How do you gauge that?
well, I agree with you. I think and this is actually the thing I was just thinking about this yesterday because I was looking at the series and I was planning it out for another hockey pool that I'm in, a playoff pool, and I
Yeah,
just realized Jets, they're one of the few teams that decided not to do too much at the deadline to bring in these superstars to kind of fit in to your team and make things work. And it's sort of this idea of, do you bring in all these new guys and try to get them all acclimated, or do you go with the guys that brought you to the dance, right? Sure, they added
right.
Shen, they added Tanev, but that's for a little bit of depth. They've had injuries, and look at it's worked out really good. You move Iafallo up to the first line, you move Tanev to the third line to play with Lowry with the injuries to Ehlers and to Velarde. So it's really good. But I think Colorado and Dallas, I think there's going to be some challenges just trying to get guys in like Rantanen. It's not. I agree with you. He hasn't kind of fitted. Like Dallas doesn't even know who they are. I'm not sure they figured it out. Now they've injured. They've got their number one defenseman. Their number one forward is out. Their number one defenseman is just coming back. So Colorado looks prime and ready to roll over this thing, but I'm not counting Dallas out. Even with that, playoffs
Right,
are a different story. They went 0-5-2, so that was the Jets went 8-0 and they got blown out in 5 games
right,
against Colorado.
right.
So I like Colorado in the series, but I think it's going to be a bloodbath, and I'm hoping it is. I hope it goes 7 games. Each game is a 1-0 overtime win after 4 or 5 overtime periods. They're playing until 3 o'clock in the morning. They play on the second night. Go 7 games. I love it. And the Jets can have their 3 days off in between every game there, 3, 4, and 5, rest up. I hope the Jets get through. And then whoever's waiting for them in the other end will be ready to be picked off. So I like
So,
Colorado, but I
so
like
who is coming out of this series?
Colorado in 7. They win in Dallas to win it.
Yeah, I'm going Colorado in 6. I just think Dallas is going to struggle to score, and my suspicion is that they're going to come out of Dallas with a split. Colorado did go up 3-1 going home because they're going to dominate at home. And then Dallas wins in game 5, but Colorado wins in game 6
Okay.
on home ice in Denver.
We'll see.
Um, Quickly, let's shift out east to talk about the Sunday games. Quickly, there's 3 more that I want to get to, and the rest we'll talk about on Monday.
Yeah.
Um, Colorado. Carolina is hosting the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah.
Devils getting some help back, including Jacob Markstrom making his return to the postseason. Dougie Hamilton has just come back into the New Jersey lineup. Still no Josh Hughes. Carolina coming off a loss in Ottawa and a loss in Montreal over the last 2 days. but they haven't had anything to play for a while, so they've been locked into that number 2 seed. To me, if it was ever an opportunity for the Carolina Hurricanes to say, this is us, this is the time for us to go on a run, I think this is the side of the bracket for them to do it. I think this is the side of the bracket that is very, very intriguing. Because, yes, and you're going to hear this on Monday, I'm not fully sold on the Washington Capitals in their series with the Montreal Canadiens. But I also wonder how much the turmoil is going to affect Carolina. Yes, they have Logan Stankoven, which is also a big part of what's missing in the Dallas lineup.
Yeah.
Uh, I think Stankoven's a much better option at this point in time than Mikko Rantanen in that Dallas lineup. But that being said, there is something to be said about the going for it, not being able to, sign Rantanen and then move them, and then you get your 2 first rounders and Stankoven. Um, but what do you? Am I oversimplifying it or overstating it? That this might be Carolina's best chance to go on a run.
Actually, see, I agree, but I disagree. I think they were, all things being equal, when we look from the outside in, I thought Carolina had a better team last year and the year before, like more suited to do something magical, and
Yeah,
it never happened. They ran up against the Rangers one year and against, I don't know who it was the other year. Maybe it was the Rangers again in the conference final, or maybe it was Tampa Bay. I'm not sure, Florida, but I just always thought they're ready. They're there. That team is good. It has no real weaknesses. Frederick Anderson is a good goalie. Like, they can win it all. And then something would happen. They just couldn't score enough goals or whatever. And now this year, nobody's really talking about Carolina. People are talking about the Leafs. They're talking about Tampa Bay. It's been one of the hottest teams coming on stretch. Florida, well, they've been kind of playing rope-a-dope, but they're going to bring it on because they're the Stanley Cup champion defenders. So you got Toronto. Everyone's talking about Toronto, Tampa Bay, Florida, even Washington being right up there with Ovi getting the goal record. And this could be the year, even though nobody's talking about Carolina, they could be, I agree with you on that they could sneak in here, win against New Jersey, upset Washington, and suddenly they're in the conference final. And it's not a hard path to imagine because they have a good team, they have a good coach, and maybe they didn't like all the pressure on them. Now they have no pressure.
right.
Nobody's expecting them to do anything. I like
Well,
Carolina in the series. I'm picking them in 6 games over the Devils.
Carolina to me has a path that on paper looks to be easier than a lot of the other paths,
Could be
particularly through the Central, particularly through the Atlantic, and particularly through the other
Pacific.
division, the Pacific. I didn't still that could be an interesting. We'll get to that in just a minute because I want to talk about the late Sunday game.
Okay.
Um, I
I
am
like
going with a
Carolina in 6. What do you like?
I'm going Carolina in 5.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Couple of games going to overtime. Going the way of the Carolina Hurricanes.
Okay.
I just like their depth over New Jersey overall.
I think, yeah, I agree. Even though when Markstrom's back for the Devils, I think Carolina plays a much better defensive game, the kind of game you need to play in the playoffs. That's, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing too, Rhett, is New Jersey has disappointed me. They have fallen off. Like, I had New Jersey. We were led to believe in the preseason. Oh yeah, put Jacob Markstrom in, and all things being equal,
Yep.
fits the goaltending, and it'll be a Stanley Cup champion. Well, they didn't. They didn't account for the loss of John Hughes, which I think is a bigger loss than a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are anticipating. Um, and I think it's right. Like, how does a team respond when they lose their best player? Well, it hasn't gone well in New Jersey, and unfortunately for Sheldon Keefe, it looks like another disappointing first round exit.
Okay. I want to talk about it. Battle of Ontario.
Oh
We've
yeah,
waited years for this. Years. Has it been like 15 years since they met up in a playoff series?
20. They last
20.
met in 04.
21 years. Oh, man. Those were some good series. Listen, I like this series, and you know why I like it? Because the Leafs. If you remember, halfway through the year, the Jets went out there. I think that was right after Christmas, the beginning of
Right
January,
before
and
Christmas on the
right before
21st.
Christmas, and they bombed the Leafs. Leafs look terrible, and they're just, what's Craig Berube doing? Blah blah blah. They had injuries. This and that. Matthews wasn't scoring. People were upset. What are they going to do with Marner? Da 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 da. And something clicked after Christmas with that team. Marner started scoring. Matthews was injured, but he is still helping the team win. Tavares filled the void for Matthews not scoring. Nylander did his thing. Other role players stepped up. Uh, Chris Tanev on defense. And now you've got a team that wins their division. And now people are expecting, like, this could be the year for the Leafs. And who do they have in the first round? Ottawa. Up and coming team, scrapping and finding their way into the playoffs. A lot of question marks for Ottawa, people would say, but there's some question marks for the Leafs too. To me, this is going to be a great series. You're going to laugh when I tell you who I'm going to pick and in the number of games, but that may be side. But this series, unfortunately, if Ottawa doesn't have a healthy Brady Tkachuk who can dominate games with his physical play and going to the net and after the whistle and intimidation, just his game. That's the Tkachuk game, especially Brady. That
Yeah.
if he's not there, playoffs are meant for Tkachuk brothers or Tkachuks. And if he's not healthy, I just think it makes Ottawa a very different team against Toronto. I know Ottawa won the season series. See, we got somebody say it was 04, so 21 years. I like Toronto in this series. I think Ottawa's going to give them all that they can. And I would have picked Ottawa to win this series in 7 games if I knew Tkachuk was 100% healthy. He's not. He's going to play, but he's not 100% healthy. And if he was 100% healthy, I'd pick Ottawa in 7. I'm picking the Leafs in 7 games. I know you can't believe it, but I am. Michael, over
I
to you.
can't. I can't.
What do you like?
Full disclosure, I was the Leaf fan before the Jets came back. So yes, I remember those Battle of Ontario. I think it was also that they met back to back years. I think they also met in 03 too, or they met in 06, I think.
Yeah.
Uh 03, I think they met. It was 2 times in 3 years or twice in a row where they met. Um that being said, long are the days of Daniel Alfredson, Gary Roberts, Matt Sundin, Patrick Lalime, Eddie Belfour, those types.
Yeah.
But I think this is exactly what hockey needs to ignite a rivalry. I 100% agree with you. Like, if you're gonna neutralize Brady to shot, I'm just thinking like, who can neutralize Brady to shot the best? Like, to me, this is shaping up to be Brady to shot against Chris Tanev and the battle
Mhm.
for the front of the net.
Yeah.
I also looked at who from Toronto can intimidate and what Ottawa's response will be when Brady Tkachuk is not on the ice. With all due respect, I think Ridley Reid will be a respectable member for that situation. But I just think with Toronto, the way they're built, um, this is a Craig Berube, Brad Tree living, rough around the edges, with a couple of really good goal scorers in Marner and Matthews. Um, I love the way this Leafs team is built. And this year more than ever, if this team loses in the first round, the Shanna plan has gone bye bye. The Shanna plan will go up in smoke. The
Yeah.
Shanahan will not have a job.
I can't
Um,
even imagine what happens in Toronto if they don't win this series. Like,
that
they have to blow everything up. They just have to.
and I think it's even more of a, you're going to lose a generational player in Mitch Marner, a generational player that the Leafs have had, homegrown. I'm not saying a Connor McDavid generational player. I'm just saying a generational Leafs player. I guarantee you, if they lose this first round series, Mitch Marner will not be back in the Toronto Maple Leafs jersey. Then all bets are off about how far this goes up the chain as far as a rebuild. All of the resources, all of the um, systems and all of the rough and tough around the edges are set for the Leafs to win this series and go on a deep run. Yes, I'm spoiling my future picks. The Leafs are going on a deep run. It starts with dispatching the Ottawa Senators in six in their own building. Oh, wait.
Wow.
Ottawa will not even have home ice because it's going to be obliterated with Toronto Maple Leaf jerseys. Thank you for coming. Great season, Ottawa. But you have a few lessons to learn about being back in the playoffs. And I
Yep.
think this Leafs core has learned enough lessons and is ready to break through. Leafs in six.
And you know what I think too with that prediction? Leafs in 6 in Ottawa. The Leafs are up 3-2 or up 1 goal. And then Ottawa pulls their goalie, and the Leafs get the puck, and down comes Max Domi. And at about right between the circles, he winds up and takes a slap shot and drills it into the middle of the net. And then he skates by the Ottawa bench and goes, "Come on, do you want it?
Yeah,
You want it?"
yeah, yeah.
That's my
And
prediction.
who was that? Who was that? Was that Morgan Riley that took that slap shot years ago? A year or two ago on an
No,
empty net.
Morgan Riley didn't do it. No, it was Ottawa guy. I think it was that. I think it was Grieg. I think Grieg took the
Right.
slap
Oh,
shot,
really? Right. Yes. Somebody
took the
did a
slap
slap
shot,
shot.
and then Morgan Riley came by and
Right.
went after
Right.
him because
Right.
of it. Yeah.
That's how it ended up.
And they were all saying,
So,
"Oh, blah 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 blah." So I want the Leafs to do that in Ottawa, in their barn, sticking it to them as they go out. And not that I care about this,
yeah.
but I think that would be
So
great
I'm
hockey.
doing I'm doing Leafs and sets just to
Okay,
take the pressure off of Game 7 because I don't think Leaf Nation can handle another Game 7. I just
okay,
I don't think they could.
okay. And we should talk about now this Minnesota Vegas series really quickly, and then I just wanted
Yep.
to add one or two other things really quick before we go.
Yep.
So
Yep. Go ahead.
no, you go first. Minnesota Vegas. What do you like about this series? What do you think?
I I'm perplexed. The
Perplexed.
the lack of respect that Minnesota's getting in this series is absolutely befuddling to me. Um, this is a team that for the most part up to January was fighting with the Winnipeg Jets for top spot in the Central. Yes, they lost Kirill Kaprizov. Um, yeah, they lost defenseman there, Brodin, I think it was.
Yeah, for a
Um,
while. Yeah.
but they're getting a lot of disrespect, and I'm just trying to figure out why. This is a team that got it back together. They played a great game to get back into the playoffs. This is a team that has $16 million in dead cap space that has not been able to do anything with it because of the Ryan Suter's at Parise buyouts. This is a team that has a goaltender in Marc-Andre Fleury, who's going to be on a retirement tour after this season is done, and a very good young goaltender in Philip Gustafson. However, they're going into Vegas where, yes, the most hated team in the NHL among some fan bases. Um, you know, gets another kick at the playoffs. And the Vegas Golden Knights are deep. The Vegas Golden Knights are scary. The Vegas Golden Knights have a good goaltender. Um, all things kind of being said, I think it becomes within the margins in this series. You know, who gets that key power play goal? Who gets that key save when it comes down to it? And I think in a best of seven series, the team with the most experience shines through. And I think this is why the Vegas Golden Knights are going to win this series, but it will be far from easy. I think just to get my pick ready here, I think the Vegas Golden Knights beat the Minnesota Wild in 7, but it's not going to be easy because I think Minnesota is going to use the oh, well, it's all Vegas and Vegas and Vegas is going to be the top and blah, 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 blah. And I think, trust me, when a team gets disrespected, it gets into the dressing room. And players take that personally,
Yeah.
and players will want to do something about it. I cannot believe the level of disrespect being shown toward the Minnesota Wild, and I can't figure it out. So, Vegas in 7 for me.
Okay. Um, I'm like you. I like Vegas too. I like them in 6 though. But I'm going to say this though is that Vegas. This is not the Vegas from 3 years ago that had or that won the Stanley Cup and had Jonathan Marchessault show on that team as their MVP and their ninth winner. It's a different team. It's a little bit older team. They got Jack Eichel, a little bit young, but they're a little bit older. They're good. They're a very good team, but I wouldn't say they're the dominant Las Vegas Knights team of 3 years ago when they won the cup.
Nope.
That was just a different animal. I think they are vulnerable, and yeah, I just think they they will. I'm pretty sure they'll win against Minnesota, but I agree with you. It's not going to be easy. I have them in 6 games. You have them in 7. I think Minnesota is going to give them all that they can handle. And to your point, it's going to be very defensive. Minnesota is not going to give them a lot. Maybe on the power play, they'll have to score a goal or two in order to make things interesting. But yep, I agree. So there you got your picks. Now, can I talk about some other things before we go? We got a
Yep.
few minutes.
Yep.
We go
Sure.
overtime.
Yep.
This week, 2 existing Jets who are going to be UFAs at the end of the year
Yes.
said, I want to play in Winnipeg, and signed multi-year contracts for millions of dollars. Alex Iafallo signed a 3-year, $11 million, works out to about 3.67 a year, I believe, if I'm doing my math correctly.
Yes.
Which is a little bit of a pay cut. He was getting $4 million a year for 3 years. Now he's at 3.67. So a little bit of a pay cut, but it's not a pay cut. It's the sign of the times. It is what it is. He's 31 years old. And he says, I love it here. I love playing here. I love Winnipeg. I want to be here. They want me here. I want to get this done. Boom. He does it. No shame. I love it. Neil Pionk, a guy that everyone said, oh, that's a throw-in for Trouba. And the Jets were adamant, if they're going to trade Trouba to New York, we want that American Neil Pionk. They get him here, and people said, oh, who's this Pionk guy? And Scheifele, I remember Scheifele and Wheeler saying, you guys, Neil Pionk, he could play. He's an offensive right-hand shooting defenseman. He's got some upside, Well, now Neil Pionk signs wait for it, is it 6 years, $7 million a year? Is that what it was?
Yep.
Or was it 7 years, $6 million? No, I think it's 6 years.
7 over 6.
7 over 42 million, but it's $7 million a year, which makes him very interesting, the number 1 paid defenseman on the Winnipeg Jets, which is a little bit surprising. But Josh Morrissey signed his deal a few years ago in the market of that time. I think Morrissey's got, is it $6 million a year for 8 years?
Yeah, hold on. It's 6.2, I think. 6.25.
6.2, but I think it was a long term. It was an 8-year contract.
Yeah, it was sure. 8 year. Yeah, you're right.
8 years. So all that to say, can they renegotiate with Morrissey? Will they do something else? Who knows? This is the new dynamic. Like when you sign a deal back then, it is what it is, right? Any deal you signed 5 years ago, if the salary cap's going up and margins are going up, profits are going up, league-wide revenues are going up, more jerseys are being sold, more soda pops, more hot dogs, teams are going to make more money, salary caps are going to go up. If you sign a long-term deal, you get the security because it's a guaranteed contract, but maybe your deal at the front end is really good. By years 3 or 7, 8 or 6, 7, 8, it doesn't put you in the best spot. But you can't think about it like that.
Just to interject quickly, Morrissey's deal was 6.25
for 8 years. I thought it was 8 years
till the end of the 2028 season.
2028.
So this year and 3 more.
Okay, but I think it was an 8-year deal when he signed it back in 2020.
It was, yeah.
So anyway, all that to say, great. I'm glad you got 2 guys there. Neil Pionk's good, and he's 29. He'll be here until he's 36. After that, it's a crapshoot. You don't really want to sign guys. They did that with Wheeler. I think it was a mistake. They had to do it with Scheifele and Hellebuck. They're signed till they're 38 years old. Well, what are you going to do? Maybe you got to buy him out the last year. I don't know what kind of a goalie or first line center you're going to have at 38 years old, but it is what it is.
No, let's be clear, Rick. I don't think this is a uniquely Winnipeg issue. I think
No.
every long-term deal at some point in some sport has a really bad look in the last 1 to 2 years of the deal.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And the
And
only
like,
other factor,
unless you're McDavid and you've won, a couple Stanley Cups and a couple Art Rosses, well, let's be honest. Like, if the Jets win a Stanley Cup or two, and then they go to a Stanley Cup final, and the revenues are going through the roof in Winnipeg, I think that is a contractual problem that you're willing to have, and quite honestly, it is the cost of doing business today.
and maybe that's what it is. Maybe you just do that, and then you have, the dead cap space when they're 38, Hellebuck and Shifley in 7, 8 years from now. It is what it is, and you have to buy him out like you
It's
did the same
it's
year in
really
New
going to
York.
be the next general manager's problem more than likely.
Well, I heard Cheveldayoff's here for life. As long as he wants to be GM, he can be GM Winnipeg. But you know what? Shifley's the type of guy. I should say this. Shifley is the type of guy I could just see him, sort of like Steve Yzerman was, right? He's was with the Detroit the whole time. He didn't go somewhere else. And Yzerman went from being number one center, number one power play, um, the man in Detroit. That was my time. Like when I was a younger man, that was Yzerman was the king of Detroit, and he was the right. We're there with Howard Chuck. There was Gretzky, Howard Chuck, and Yzerman there for a few years before Mario Lemieux came into play. Those were 1, 2, 3 centermen, and he was right up there. And then what happened at the end of his career when he won the Stanley Cup? He was the third line center. Fedorov was ahead of him, and whoever else was there, and he was more of a role player. He was a defensive guy. He was out there at the end of the game. He was good on faceoffs. So maybe Shifley's that guy. Maybe by the end of his career, he's still effective being a third line center, not a first line center, and he's still valuable at that time. But the only other question for me, and I'll maybe throw this out there heading out, is what about Nick Ehlers? Why are we not signing a deal with Nick Ehlers? What's going on with Nick Ehlers? Brandon Tanev is the other UFA that I'm aware of. That's the only two that come to mind that are yet unsigned. And Ehlers.
I can give you the list here: Ehlers, Tanev, Appleton,
Okay.
Toninato.
Okay.
Nobody on the back end this year.
No, that's right. That's what I'm saying. Because Shen is another year. They're all signed. They had just signed the deals recently. So all that to say, I'm interested. What are they going to do with Ehlers and Tanev? Tanev, well, is what it is. But Ehlers is an important part. And I know, does he want to be here? Is the reason why the Jets are signing Pionk and Iafallo is because they've been told already. Ehlers says, listen, I'm playing it out and I want to test free agency, and nobody wants to say anything because they don't want to ruin the focus on the playoffs now. I don't know. Be interesting.
What does your dad tell you?
Pardon?
What does your dad tell you about that?
Maybe he just wants to test free agency. I don't know. Every player is different. That's what's so quirky about it. You think, oh, some guys, it's all about the money. You know what? That's true. Some guys, it's all about the money. They'll chase a deal wherever they want. They don't care where they play. It's all about the money. Where's the place where I can get the nicest tan, play the least amount of taxes, and maximize my salary? I don't care about winning.
And maybe in some cases, the least amount of travel.
Yeah, or at least about travel. I don't care about the vibe in the dressing room. I don't care about getting along with other guys. I don't care about all that stuff. I just want the money. And there's other guys that say, you know what? I maybe thought that way in my 20s. Now, like Pionk, Iafallo, Niederreiter, Nemestikov, they're all 29, 30. They say, you know what? I like playing in Winnipeg. Okay, it's cold in the winter. I can go in the summertime. I can go to my cottage. I can go back to my home country of Switzerland or Russia, lay at the beach there, whatever, do my thing. But some guys, it's just not all about the money. It's about the circumstance. It's about the coach. It's about the team, the vibe, the everything. And I peg Ehlers to be one of those guys. I just don't see him as being this guy that's all about the dollars. I think he's got more character in his skin, in his DNA, which would lead me to believe that he would like playing in Winnipeg. The only thing is, does he believe that he's being that he's not getting the respect he deserves, that he believes he's a first line left winger and I want to go to a team that doesn't have Kyle Connor in front of me. Now he's on the number one power play this year, which is good. He's getting a lot of points that way.
Yeah.
He's a real driver. He earns more penalties. He wins more penalties for the Jets that the Jets are on the power play than any other player on the team, just by his speed and by his shiftiness, and he knows how to fall down the right way when the refs are looking. So, but I don't know. That one's really interesting. It would be a shame to me that the Jets lose Ehlers for nothing, but I guess they've decided this is a really good chance to win the cup, and they didn't want to trade him away for futures. They wanted him in the lineup. So there you go.
Here's where I sit on this. I believe that there's a deal to be made between the Winnipeg Jets and the Oilers, and I have not spoken to anybody involved in these discussions. I think this is a scenario of the player thinks he's worth more money than the team is willing to offer him, at least right now. Like, to be blunt, this is 2 playoffs in the last 3 years, maybe 3 in the last 4 where Nick Oilers has not been playing.
He gets hurt very easily. He gets hurt a lot.
And like my argument is, as much as I love Nick Oilers as a hockey player, if he's not going to be around when the games really matter, to me that's not worth an extra $2 million or whatever Nick Oilers is asking for. And
he's making $6 million a year now.
But
does he want to make?
Can you make an argument that he's an $8 million player? I can't.
I can't either. You can't have it. Like, I'm just saying, he can't be making more than Scheifele and Hellebuck. And Hellebuck and Scheifele are going to make $8 million a year, right? Or eight and a half, or 8.5, whatever. It's 8.25, 8.5, whatever. I'm just saying. But to me, Nick Ehlers is not $8 million a year. He's just not. Now, he can't score on a shootout. He has no moves on a shootout. They never use him for the shootout because he doesn't have hands. He's got speed, and he's got a pretty good shot on the power. Or if he ever wins a penalty shot, or he's chosen to do the penalty shot on the shootout, it's hardly ever. Yeah. He just comes in and tries to do a wrist shot through the legs or in the top corner. But he doesn't have hands. He doesn't have hands like Connor and Scheifele and Perfetti. So I think, to your point, he's making $6 million a year. What he's not gonna, I wouldn't pay him because he's 31. Is he 31? I think he's 31 because he's been here 10 years. I think he's 30 or 30. He's not Ehlers. No, he's younger than Scheifele. He might be 30. He's 29 or 30. I think Connor's 29.
29.
He's 29. I'd offer him 6.5, 7 for 6 or 7. I'm not offering him 8 for 8 or 8 over 7. I'm just not making him $8 million. He's no more than a $7 million a year player in my books. But can he get more than 7 in the open market?
Probably.
Maybe. Can he maybe find a team where he could play first line left winger minutes?
Probably.
Maybe. But is that a good team? Do you want to go to the Islanders? You could probably be on the first left winger playing with Horvat on the Islanders. Do you want to play for Patrick Waugh and get screamed at by him and have that? You want to go play for Tortorella?
Sometimes the grass is not greener in other places.
That's what I'm saying. It's because it's the vibe, it's the feel, it's fitting into the group, it's fitting into the coach understanding who you are and using to your ability. Now you could say, well, I could find that another team. Maybe. You got to go like what team is going to pay him $8 or $9 million a year for 7 or 8 years?
And then the question becomes, what have you done for me in the biggest time of the year in the playoffs? Well, you spent it on the injured list.
Yeah. And he's kind of a soft player. In the playoffs, he doesn't shine. He shines during the regular season when he's healthy.
Why does Adam Lowry have so much success in the playoffs? Because he's like a madman and doesn't care and runs through a wall and doesn't care for any consequences.
I agree. And it's interesting how Ehlers and Lowry have a lot of chemistry they've had because they've played together in overtime. They played together in part of the season there. It'd be really interesting if Ehlers comes back. I would seriously consider playing Ehlers, Lowry, and Appleton and moving Niederreiter up to play with Perfetti and Nemestikov. I would really consider that.
It's interesting with the longer this conversation goes on, the more I think Ehlers is due for a modest raise. But if you want a crazy raise, I think it's okay to let them go. I really do.
Well, we're going to find that out. And they're not going to do it now, like during the play. Well,
No.
maybe they're doing the playoffs, but I don't think so. I think once the playoffs start, that's why Pionk and Iafallo signed now, like in the gap. That was the last week of the season before.
And what does it say about this chemistry, right? How far this chemistry's come in the last 2 years? That you have, listen to it. It's a very bad week for the nobody wants to play in Winnipeg crowd.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a very bad
I
week
agree. I
because
agree.
we have an ownership group that's shown the last 3 days, but they're willing to spend money. But next thing for me though is wondering about the Dylan Sandberg contract, but we can talk about that in the off season. I don't think that's getting any more cheap by the day.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
They'll cross that bridge when they get to. I think he
We
signed for
cross
one more
we
year.
cross the bridge when we come to it. I think this Winnipeg Jets culture is the best it's been since we've been here. I expect they'd play out run that would reflect on that.
All right, there you go.
Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties. Thank you for the extra half an hour, Rick. We will talk about the remaining three
Three
series
series.
that start on Monday, and we'll get ahead to our predictions as well for the other three series, plus who we think is going to be in the Cup final on Monday at 5. And we'll also talk about Game 1 as well, since we have a
Right.
hockey game tomorrow afternoon.
We'll have game one under our belt and look forward to game two later that evening.
Yep. So for Red Petty, sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. For Red Petty, Michael Joe, thanks to everybody in the comments as well. Rob for commenting here, although we didn't have really a lot of time to get to them. Rob's already predicting he said, let's throw a real wrench into Bettman Stanley Cup final. All Winnipeg final, Jets versus Leafs. I guess
Okay.
Rob really wants to see what would happen to me if that
Yeah.
was the case.
It'd
What
be
kind
great
of
for Canada. It'd be great for Canada because that the cup would end up here again. So that'd be
yeah,
good. Yeah,
yeah,
I
there's
agree.
something to be said about it, right?
Yep.
But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We done a long way to go before then. Enjoy the start of the playoffs. Thank you for
Yes.
the extra time, Rich. We will talk to everybody on Monday. Enjoy game 1. Enjoy the first 5 games of the playoffs, and we'll be there to talk about it Monday at 5. For Rich Petty, this is Mike Riddell saying good night. Thank you for watching. Good night from Winnipeg.